Tom's approach to study of the philosophy of freedom. The philosophy of freedom is a science of freedom based on comparative research. You can verify yourself by comparing two psychological observations and asking which will enable you to attain what you seek in life. Now, an example is last week we talked about self-perception compared to self-definition. The philosophy of freedom sets up comparisons throughout the book, and that's your comparative research. We discussed this in our experience of self-perception and our experience of self-definition. These two can be compared, and then you can ask yourself which will enable you to attain what you seek in life, which is part of the freedom Steiner is presenting. It's a freedom to reach your full potential, to be inspired by your principles. You not only have principles and ideas, but you are empowered to carry them out. That's really important because often people have good intentions, they have ideals, they have principles, but they're very weak. They don't stand up, they don't speak truth, they give up easily, they're bullied. It's a real key element in that you not only have principles, but you are empowered to carry them out in a tough world. That's why the philosophy of freedom is really not that difficult, because when you make this comparison, you can see that self-perception where you're just identifying yourself as according to your race or appearance or ethnicity or gender, that's not going to really take you that far. Where self-definition is unlimited. There are no limits. You can define yourself to become anything you want. You can strive for your highest ideals, and that's going to put you on the course to attain what you seek in life. So there's a simple comparison and a simple conclusion. This is a process how you can verify everything in the philosophy of freedom, a simple process. Now, the study group process. What I thought about doing, rather than just having a normal study group, I wanted to pack as much training of elements of ethical individualism into it as possible. I came up with this particular process, which I think will work. It's experimental, maybe it won't work. We'll have to find out. But the objectives of the study group is to learn the theory and practice of Rudolf Steiner's Science of Freedom, develop a group training process, see if we can come up with a training process that is effective, that works, that changes people. Well, then many people could use the process and it could do a lot of good. Build a philosophy of freedom of community. That's a big issue in this cultural upheaval that's happening. It's important to have connections. It's important to have networking of people with similar views that maybe you can organize, start a new Waldorf school in your community, and many other things. These things come out of a networking and community building. Possibly in the future, initiatives could spring out of that. I would like to see 100 study groups going on throughout the week, which then could really start building a philosophy of freedom community. Rudolf Steiner, back a long time ago, there was a lot of controversy in the Anthroposophical Society because the philosophy of freedom people were in conflict with the anthroposophists. So Steiner suggested that the movement split in two, and the philosophy of freedom people go out and form free communities based on the philosophy of freedom, and the anthroposophy people continue the work of the Anthroposophical Society. That was his sincere suggestion, but the members of the Anthroposophical Society rejected that idea and decided to just remain, one Anthroposophical Society. So mostly the philosophy of freedom people eventually, I think, left, and it became more of the, the Anthroposophical Society. And it shares study group discussion highlights by recording, editing, and posting to YouTube. Some people feel uncomfortable about this, but considering the crisis at hand, for at least the groups that I'm in, I want to record everything. Well, of course, just the highlights. That's why nobody needs to worry about being embarrassed, because if you're embarrassing, you're not going to appear in the highlights. There's 2 groups each day discussing the same thing, so it'll be highlights out of those 2 groups. So it's likely you may not even be in the highlights. But anyways, we can form other groups for those who want to, have more personal, private groups. I mean, if somebody wants to start a group, I can sponsor them and promote them through the website, and they can start a philosophy freedom study group. I just want to focus the ones that I'm involved in this way to get the word out, because it's kind of a war of ideas. And due to the censorship and the suppression of free speech, there's not a lot of ideas, counter ideas supporting freedom that are getting out there to people. Who, for anyone with the intention to participate, the study groups that I'm in are participation groups. But there's 2 ways to participate in the live Zoom room study group, which is what this is, or participate by posting a question or comment on each weekly study page. We've been going to the study pages, and you can put comments there. If somebody wants to participate and is unable to appear in the live study group, they can post comments and questions before or after the group meeting takes place, which I can look at those comments. And if somebody has a question or comment, I may bring it up in the live meeting. So we're all aware of the study page, and the book is the Philosophy of Freedom. There's an easier to read translation, English translation of the Philosophy of Freedom at this link here. So here's the structure of the meeting. I have a clock. You can see it right here. There's a clock which shows the hour time. We're in the 4th quarter. The meeting's divided into 4 parts, with a presentation by me within the first 15 minutes. And then we'll go around to share study insights, and then have another round and share life experience, because we want to make sure that we get both in there. The study insights is where it's kind of like your intuitive insight into the text that we're looking at. So, I mean, you can, depending on how your intuition works, you may need to prepare ahead of time and come up with an insight, or if you're more spontaneous, you can get an insight during the group meeting. But what is your unique insight, or what really flashed to you about the text? And then the life experience, we want to not just remain in theory, we want to get into life experience. How have you experienced what we're talking about in the text? What's your experience of it in real life? What is the reality that you've experienced? And then the 4th round is the round 2 and 3 is about sharing our individual experience. And then round 4 is group insight. It's a group contemplation where you're looking more toward responding to what somebody else said. I mean, round 2 or 3 are individual takes. They don't have to have any relationship to the person who spoke before you. But in round 4, when we speak, it's kind of like a group conversation, in that we want to say something that comes out of what was said previously. So that's a different skill. That's why I'm putting in these different things to develop different skills. One is we need to be able to speak our truth, and the other is we need to come together as a group and look for a group insight by learning learning how to participate in group conversation, which is different. Participation, there's a nomenclature of the science of freedom, which is a term and concepts that need to be clearly understood if we want to take this philosophy and apply it to life, which is what ethical individualism is about. Ethical individualism is not a theorist. He's a doer, a knowing doer. And the way to apply the philosophy of freedom to life is first you need clear concepts that are well understood, and then that can be translated into real life. Intuitive insight, each participant shares a study insight of the text. Life experience, each person shares their experience. Group discussion. Here's a link to 2 great articles about how to have a group conversation. Broad-mindedness, I'll bring up something about the various worldviews. Courage, speak your truth to the world. Meeting will be recorded. This is a big issue today. Like, take, for example, Waldorf education. I've talked to many teachers in Waldorf education who are very upset about what the changes happening to Waldorf education. But for the most part, many of them remain silent. Of course, they're afraid of losing their job, which is a good way to silence a person. But unless people have courage to speak their truth, it's not going to turn out well. That's why one of the reasons I support recording these meetings is that people can develop the courage to speak truth to the world. Now, of course, we always filter everything we say, so you can filter what you say within the group meeting. You don't have to reveal your deepest secrets because we're filtering anyways. So that's just kind of another filter if you need to do that. Leadership. This is really a leadership group. I'd like to see hundreds of groups because I think that's what's really needed. So hopefully everybody in the group will someday lead their own study group. Now imagine a network of philosophy of freedom study groups meeting on all days and at all hours, immersed in the philosophy of freedom. That's what it's going to take to change people's lives, because if the philosophy of freedom is going to become a significant life philosophy for you, you have to immerse yourself into it so that you take in those concepts so that they live in you. And so when you're going through life, these concepts come to mind and become a life philosophy. Obey self. And then a principle of the philosophy of freedom is not to really take orders from anybody. So all that says disregard everything that I've just said and obey only yourself, which is a fundamental principle of ethical individualism. So that really dismisses everything I've just said, but that's, just the way it is. Use your own judgment.